Billy Wolfram, to catch you up to date, has had a hard time and he's trying to find a new way to paint. Hours passed. The canvas remained untouched. Billy had to laugh at the irony. He'd been painting for over 20 years and never before experienced the passage of time. He now ached through every instant, feeling like fire ants were crawling across his body. Billy Wolfram had been spoiled and never had to confront the tedium and physical exertion involved in creating art. He took a large book on Eastern art from the shelves in the living area and flipped through it for another hour while eating a bowl of Cheerios. While scanning the reproductions in this book, Billy came across a particularly striking mandala and tried a little exercise. With his keen pictorial imagination, he focused his eyes on the brightly colored painting while simultaneously visualizing the sound of the Hail Mary. He began to silently recite the words, following their spiraling movement as they rotated through his mind. From its repetitively circular rhythm, Billy now knew, without a doubt, that the terse Western prayer had been written in the form of a mantra and was, like any mantra, the verbal correspondent to a mandala. The use of symmetry in these Eastern paintings was astonishing. Apparently, these geometric figures represented the universe in Hindu and Buddhist symbolism. Carl Jung, who collected mandalas and later integrated them with psychoanalysis, had written in the book's foreword that they represented a dreamer's pursuit of completeness and self-unity. Billy had finally found the catalyst for his show. It happened on a day that he was honestly on the verge of giving up. His inner voice had gone hoarse from repeating incentives to remain focused. As a desperate means of getting underway, Billy reverted to the most fundamental geometric forms. Those basic shapes, like squares, triangles, and curves, Galileo wrote, had been used in the creation of the universe. Reaching to the top of a supply cabinet, Billy randomly grabbed a previously unused brush and dipped its virgin bristles into an unfinished pigment. After a long minute, he stepped up and thoughtlessly dabbed a single red circle onto the center of the canvas. Frustrated, expecting the worst, he moved back about 10 feet. Billy slowly scrutinized it and finally marveled at the perfection of the red sphere and its sublime coherence on the flat white field. By now, Billy had learned not to question the rare offerings of chance, and however small, he considered this a significant start. Dropping the brush into a can of cleanser, he walked out into the studio. He rose and dropped his plate into the sink, then walked over and slowly pulled the cover off of the mahogany billiard table, folding the cloth sensuously like a satin sheet, as if he were preparing a bed for a night of love. He grabbed a tray of vibrantly colored pool balls from a cabinet and cautiously emptied them across the playing surface. The gleaming colors silently rolled in steady alignment across the green felt. Billy was bending over the table about to take his first shot when his legs began shaking uncontrollably. Stunned and acting reflexively, he leaned against the table until regaining enough balance to straighten up. Billy hesitantly scanned the green surface, seeing the minute red dot on the new cue ball, which had arrived by messenger only 3 days earlier. The Monarch Billiards Company, typically so reliable, had mistakenly sent him a cue ball from an old and seldom played form of English snooker, rather than his usual cue that he'd ordered. Billy braced himself against the mahogany rails, all color draining from his face. Billy slowly came to terms with the connection between the dot on the ball and in the painting he'd just begun, and speculated on the nature of these corresponding images. In the end, he concluded that it didn't matter if the spotted snooker ball had influenced his starting brushstroke or was merely a coincidence. Billy had found a nexus, and the fact that there was a definite correlation didn't diminish his sense of satisfaction. If anything, he had found another facet in the game of pool, a harmony between one passion lost and another found. Most cultures have possessed systems to foretell fate. Originally, the sortes virgilianae was a Roman method of divination. The practitioner would arbitrarily open Virgil's poem, the Aeneid, and the first verse, haphazardly touched by his fingertip, contained the prophetic response. It might have been a warning, a prediction, or some message from a relative in the legions far off at war in a dramatic promise. When the Catholic Church became the empire's official religion, the Bible supplanted Virgil as the authorized text. Although the Church renamed the divination process the Sortes Biblicae, Romans, including educated Christians, continued to use the original title. Billy saw a surprising amount in the chance structure of balls settling to a stop after each shot. Interpreting these abstract configurations was different than using books or prescribed systems, despite their complexity. It also saved so much valuable time and energy when his purpose was to simply crack the balls as hard as possible, intending to disperse the pack as widely as possible, ignoring the game's customary objective of knocking each ball into a designated pocket. He could overlook other superfluous details as well, such as accuracy, finesse, and precision. Scanning the bank shots, caroms, and combinations, then making sense of the remaining abstract structures, was also entirely unlike thumbing through the index of a book. There were no illustrations in any reference book where Billy could find any resemblance to a clump of 11 balls shaped precisely like a torn beehive. By constantly examining the radiant spheres formations after each shot on his large emerald tablet, Billy had invented a kinetic version of the sortes. Billy now calmly approached the table and walked himself once more through that moment. He wanted to recreate the exact progression, hoping it would validate every factor of the memory. Saturday morning, despite the ruckus in the streets and a woman's strident threats, he circled the table, chalking his stick for the second shot. Hunching above the cue ball, Billy noticed a lone 12 ball lying apart from the pack and perfectly aligned for a successful bank shot. He yielded to temptation and reverted to the game's true objective. He tapped the cue ball into the 12. The lavender striped globe caromed off the rail and rolled softly across the lawn of green felt, dropping quietly into a burnished leather pocket. His thin body trembled. He suddenly understood how much he'd forgotten during his obsessive rampage. He'd entirely overlooked essential attributes like grace, fluidity, and precision, which are byproducts of that elusive trait called touch, something I believe the writer who was writing Billy learned on the basketball courts. The course now seemed remarkably clear as he grabbed the stick and tossed a few balls around the table. The answer was in his most fundamental change possible, and Billy was anxious to get underway. This task couldn't only be about chaos theory or esoteric analogies to Roman rituals. It was time to stop bruising balls with excessive force and expounding on their mysterious random arrangements. He might as well be deciphering the shapes of passing clouds. Billy desperately needed participation and interaction, and he wanted to line up a shot, gently stroke his stick, and sink the ball in the thick leather pocket. This was the game's purpose, after all. He wanted to aim, which was creative, and if he succeeded, that was the goal. Since Marta had left the loft, while aimlessly wandering and wasting time, Billy longed for a goal to meet, any sense of purpose leading to something productive. He fully appreciated every aspect in the art of creating, from beginning to end. It wasn't solely through intuition either, but through the wisdom of his experience and overcoming previous failures. Billy needed a more competent universe around him, giving the opportunity to compensate for everything he screwed up and tossed away. He'd grown sick of keeping constant vigil over the capricious arrangement of spheres. A crucial step in that last plan wound up being unbearably passive without any objective or aspiration. Art involved precision and finesse. It had nothing to do with obliterating balls with brute force and accessing the results, as if the best artist of his generation were an accountant calculating an actuary table. Once he discovered the proper way to proceed, the change occurred rapidly. While still thinking clearly, he concluded that the universe demands a return to order and exactitude, even in the most chaotic situations. Billy Wolfram started to paint.